Hi everyone, welcome. This is our 27th webinar. So far we've gone a long way. Today we'll be discussing particularly marketplace dropshipping trends. And for those of you who are kind of unaware of the difference between marketplace versus e-commerce, marketplace is kind of where you go to sell under a brand, whereas your own e-com store is a standalone store. Some major differences between the two is that with a marketplace, there are some stipulations with what you sell on that store, and also um, the forefront is not your brand, but it's their brand. Other aspects is advertisement is different, SEO is different. There's a lot of different components, but it's the idea of like you're taking your items and you're selling it in someone's or a company's store as opposed to a standalone store. Of course, there's benefits and negatives between both. Today, I kind of wanted to show the trends going into 2024, what to look out for. We'll also be examining 4 different marketplaces to kind of see in depth about what they are and also what has been working for them in the past few years. Take this as kind of a moment to learn more about marketplaces that you have yet to be on or marketplaces that you are on and see what has happened in the past few years. Of course, if you have any questions regarding this or lumaprints.com in general, we do have open Q&A at the end of the video or end of the webinar. So keep that in mind. Also, if you need to go or if you want to rewatch any of this content, we do have this available on YouTube afterwards. But with that, let's get into the presentation. I know that for some folks that have been working in e-com or had their own standalone store, they probably have done a lot of work in advertising or marketing on social media or establishing a good customer base. The difference with that going into a marketplace is that you still have to do those efforts of advertising yourself, going to get your name recognized outside of the online space, but you also need to take into consideration product listings, the way that the environment that you're selling your items in works and how you can leverage some tips and tricks that we'll kind of show here that will help you sell well on those platforms. Let's start with Amazon. So give me one moment as I switch over. But we could go right into Amazon as a beginner. Um, I kind of wanted to preface with, I guess, the overarching view of how Amazon has done within the years. Those of you who are kind of familiar with the platform are probably not surprised by these numbers, but I kind of wanted to show you this as an introduction to how compared to other stores that I'll be introducing later on. But as we know, Amazon has been growing exponentially, especially at the height of the it's just only seen huge growth from there. I think that it's a notable marketplace to consider, especially if you are looking to sell outside of your own e-commerce store. There are a lot of vendors on there, and that's one of the more notable things. But I also think within that consideration that there is still space for you to be in there, and I'll kind of showcase some of the ways some other stores have been successful on Amazon.com. But here again, it's just a small visual to kind of show you how they've increased and have made, well over $3 billion within the last year, or 2022 rather. And so just notable of how big of a Goliath Amazon is in terms of the e-commerce space. And it's still the biggest online space with the most customers, most visitors, and most sales, beating a lot of other stores out of the park. And you too can sell on there. I just wanted to make note of some other stuff that I think might be interesting. For example, third-party sellers, such as what would be yourself if you're selling on Amazon or plan to sell on Amazon, there's been a huge growth of people selling on Amazon in of itself, as opposed to Amazon selling items to customers. As a vendor on there, you kind of differ from how Amazon does their fulfillment within their own, space, if you will. However, a lot of people who do buy and purchase stuff on Amazon are opting for third-party sellers, not just Amazon's own fulfillment, which I think is very interesting because with Amazon.com, a lot of people do know it for its quick shipment, its easy fulfillment, but third-party sellers are just as, if not more so, expected or purchased from compared to Amazon.com. I just think that's one interesting thing to note, and it seems to be rising as we go further and further. I think that with that, it kind of lends to the idea that, yeah, if you yourself are a vendor, you are going to have some traction, and don't feel deterred by the fact that Amazon fulfills it for its own orders. Rather, there's a lot of vendors who sell stuff there and do just fine. Um, I think that, considering that a lot of the sellers there do relatively well, consider it for your own. And we can look at the ways you can start selling on Amazon.com, especially if you want to test the waters. So they have two types of plans, which I think is pretty interesting, but makes sense. With their individual plan, I think this is a great starting point for a lot of people who just want to dip their toes into Amazon.com and probably want to figure out how it will work for them, which is the individual plan, which is just getting a small fee out of each purchase. Um, and again, this is ideal if you're getting on average less than 40 units a month. But would be great for testing purposes and purposes of just seeing how your products will fare. And it's also a great place to also do some testing for, say, product descriptions, product listings, what type of products you plan to sell. You could kind of get a good test to see where your products lie within this environment of Amazon. Of course, if you start seeing numbers and sales go through more and more, then you could opt for the $40 per month plan with additional fees. This will also allow you to start running ads, and it's one of those ways that you can start looking into kind of building a large customer base within Amazon. Speaking of customer base, I wanted to kind of showcase some of the highlights from Amazon's bestsellers, particularly in wall art. That is, those who plan to sell their own art onto Amazon.com, especially through the dropshipping means such as the way Lumaprints provides. Some of the things that I noted from the bestsellers, these are just a couple from, like, I would say the top 10, but these were canvas or poster or some sort of wall art that we provide. But as you notice for Amazon, it seems like customized canvases still do really well here. Most people would big Amazon as like the one with a few variations of the same product or designs and then proceed with the purchase. But it seems like even on Amazon, customizable items are still fairly popular, with one of the vendors, the second vendor, making 4,000 or selling 4,000 products each month. And, I think it's also interesting to showcase also the way they decide to show their pricing. So even when their 11 by 14 isn't the cheapest item in their size catalog, as you can see here, the cheaper option would be the 14.99 one for the 8 by 10. My assumption is that the 11 by 14 is probably the more sought after size. And so not only are they providing a very economical price point for the 11 by 14, but they know for their customer base, an 11 by 14 is probably the more favored one versus the 8 by 10, which, while cheaper, might not be this item that people are looking for at first. So take that into consideration for your notes. If you notice a particular size selling really well, figure out how you can make that a more economically competitive item, one, and two, how you can make that kind of the forefront of your product listing. So that's one item. Another aspect of what makes these bestsellers really great is that they have really long and descriptive product titles. So all-encompassing, they're keeping track of seasonal or events that people might be using in the search engine on Amazon. So again, when you're creating your product listing, think very consciously of who the customer might be for that particular image or particular product. And from there, you can kind of utilize those keywords to put into them. Even with, for example, Mother's Garden, they're taking into consideration mothers, grandmas, birth month, and holidays. So you have like 3 holidays here in one product listing, but they know that this is what customers are searching up when they're going onto Amazon.com. So while they not be might be searching for canvas prints, or they not might be searching for wall art, they might be searching for seasonal or sentimental gifts to give. So you want to again encapsulate your products around product keywords that you think will be beneficial for your listing. Even with the posters, there's gender, there's, space, such as room, there's type of genre, such as video games. And then with the next one, similar aspect, rock, particular decades, and so on and so forth. Um, Selling well on Amazon, I think, is kind of a testing and seeing what works for you type of situation. I noted here that the best sellers are the customizable items. That is, people could put in their own names or their own pictures. If you have your own art, it's great to have there, but it's also worth considering whether or not, if you want to start surmounting some sales, if you want to also offer a customized canvas print option as well. So even if you're not in the market of just selling blank canvases where people put their own art on, something to consider if you want to create some sales or generate some sales apart from your regular designs. Okay. Um, I guess from one side of the arena in terms of how Amazon is, which is a huge Goliath, I want to go into kind of a more niche store or marketplace, and that's Etsy. For Etsy, I think that they're a bit more niche and the way that they kind of propel themselves is very unique compared to the other stores, which I'll talk about. But some notable things is that it's probably the most brand forward out of the four that I'll talk about. Again, when it comes to the sellers on Etsy, people are very cognizant or very aware of who they're buying from. And that might look like, them supporting local businesses or supporting individual sellers. Plays hand to hand with you probably have to be a bit more forward facing on your social media when it comes to having an Etsy store. Not to say that you need to have a successful social media to have a successful Etsy, but it helps. I think that when it comes to Etsy itself, people tend to come from not only the search engine, but also social media platforms from those specific brands that they're buying on Etsy from. Though I think it should be considered that it's also a great place to build out your niche. And if you want to start selling items, Etsy is a great place to start selling, on a small scale. And if you start seeing growth, then Etsy will still let you leverage it. But again, it's for a smaller base seller, if you will. Doesn't mean you can't make great sales, but it's a great starting point, especially when their selling plan is a cost per listing with additional commission fees, but at least you'll know that you don't have to pay a monthly charge to run an Etsy store. It'll just be a monthly charge to pay for the listing. So be aware that you can't put 100, items onto the store unless you know they're going to make a sale. But it'll let you test the waters with a few products and see which ones work, which one don't, and then start tailoring from there. I kind of wanted to make note of where their success is and also the changes we've seen over the course of the few years. Whereas with Amazon, you saw a steady influx going in, and there was a small spike in 2020 in comparison to the previous years. However, I think it's notable with Etsy that 2020 was a big boom for them. As you see, in some years, it almost doubled in what was in, like, say, 2019. There has been a huge spike, and I think a lot of eyes on Etsy since the height of the and from there onwards, you saw a lot of people now going there again and again. So there has been a return since that time in 2020. And as you note, that the biggest time to start selling or to leverage your products would be in the holiday time frame, which makes sense. That's generally when people tend to spend the most on their home and for gift giving. Looking back onto the bestsellers on Amazon, you could kind of apply that to Etsy as well, which is the idea of customizable canvas or customizable art or designs. That could be as easy as having someone's name on a print and changing it based on the occasion, or as intricate as having customizable variants such as color of a drawing or color of a design. If you ever been on Etsy or even look for gifts on Etsy, you know that some people even do commission-based art pieces and sell them as, physical art pieces. So not just digital commissions, but commissions that then turn into physical gift giving items. But note that during the holiday season, it's a great time to start testing that out as a lot of people are going onto Etsy for those types of items. But I think that for the overall trends throughout the year, I was looking at a couple articles regarding how Etsy views its trends itself and how, you could start going into these specific genres if these apply to you, of course. And if not, and you're looking to leverage yourself onto Etsy, then these are some good notes to keep in mind. Um, for wall art, boho or bohemian and similar genres tend to bode really well on that platform, which makes sense. Again, people know Etsy as that locally owned, self-made entrepreneur kind of platform. And so I'm not entirely surprised that Bohemian or boho art is the more popular one that people tend to opt for, since that makes most sense based on its buyer community. Other things to keep in mind is that the buyer or consumer on Etsy loves their organic looking items, such as natural wood. Keep this in mind when you're trying to leverage your product descriptions in your on Etsy. As you know, for Lumaprints, we offer natural oak and walnut for our canvas framing and oak framing for our fine art paper prints, as well as also offering full wood framing. So, again, some key items to keep in mind and probably stand in the forefront for your product listings is noting how the materials used for our canvas prints are made of wood and made of canvas material. And then, of course, when it comes to imagery, you could leverage some bohemian inspired or boho-esque imagery to sell on Etsy, as that might do really well there. And that's about it for Etsy. I know that there are other aspects to make successful, and what's great about Etsy is that I've seen a vast amount of different customers who do sell on Etsy, and they all have their niches. So keep in mind that Etsy is a niche platform for the most part, and that once you find your niche there, you could do really well. It's not that you have to appeal to a lot of people, but you just have to figure out who your customer is on Etsy and appeal to them specifically using key items, keywords, and as always, key imagery. You want the imagery to kind of reflect that small niche community and also reflect something that appeals for your imagery when you have it there. So having mock-ups that look really nice with the wood and having mock-ups that feel very cozy are just some aspects of the ways you can make it look good there. But we can move on to then Wayfair, which I think is another kind of contender and has its own very unique factors when it comes to how you yourself as a seller is going to fare on there. Their business model, I want to make some note of some items and just show its uniqueness in a way. First and foremost, they have an approval system, so not everyone could just sell on Wayfair. They have a particular charging method, which is, you know, they pay you as opposed to you, giving a small commission, a fee to them. What they'll do is they'll basically quote unquote buy your product when a customer purchases it, and then they sell the product at a higher profit margin. So they get a part of the percentage themselves from there. Um, and while that might seem a little foreign compared to, say, Amazon or Etsy or on your own store like Shopify, what makes it very interesting for Wayfair is that then they kind of uniform the prices on the same product. So say you sell a particular type of wallet at a specific type of size, then they're gonna compare and contrast versus other items that are available in that size and that type of imagery. So with those more uniform margins, it's going to make a more even playing field on the marketplace. So you're not, you know, competing with items that are dirt cheap and then items that are very expensive. They kind of try to make it so it's very uniform for the most part, though taking in consideration the wholesale cost when they're making that price point. So that's just one of the ways that I think makes Wayfair very unique in that aspect. Another item that they should be noted for is for their advertising model. They do a pay per click. So until your ad engages with customers, they aren't going to charge you, which I think is very interesting and something to know, especially if you're in the market of actually using advertisements for your marketplaces. That's just one of the things to keep in mind. And then we could look into the revenue that they've made. Very kind of different from what we've seen from Etsy and also Amazon. Whereas with Amazon, we saw a gradual up increase over the years. For Etsy, we saw a huge spike at the height of 2020. Wayfair, we do see that same spike. However, it hasn't really increased since. How that reflects to me personally is that they're just going to reach a plateau, but it's still going to be a place where I think it's a notable selling platform, only because it's particularly for furniture and it's particularly for the home. So even with the variables you see here, such as, the 2020 spike and then going into a plateau because, maybe people are spending less on home decor or home furnishings, the fact that it is a home furnishings and home decor platform in and of itself makes for a more, I would say, concentrated place of where buyers are going to be looking for home decor and looking for items to be placed in their home. So it's still a platform I think worthy of checking out and seeing whether or not you'll find success there, worth applying to if you get accepted. Again, it's particularly for the home, so it kind of stands out in comparison to Etsy or Amazon, where so many other things are being sold and not just home decor or home furnishing. And then for the last competitor I wanted to go into is Walmart. And the reason why I wanted to go into Walmart in particular is that they have a unique business model. And also, as we know, Walmart is a very popular in-store uh, company. That by that I mean that they not only sell just particularly online, but they also sell in person, making billions of dollars each year selling in store. But we'll be particularly talking about the marketplace online in particular and how we're seeing changes for Walmart. And I think it's something to be notable of, especially if you're interested in how, I guess, consumer behavior is changing. Walmart is a great example to take into consideration because you have that comparison of how the online shopper versus the in-store shopper is changing and how they're looking at I guess home decor and home furnishings now. Similar to Wayfair though, if you're considering becoming a vendor there, there is a vetting process that they have before you could actually start selling on Walmart. So not everyone could just easily sell on Walmart. They one have this expectation that you already have success elsewhere, whether it's another marketplace such as Amazon or an e-commerce success, so such as Shopify or WooCommerce. They do want an established history of you selling well online. And so, if you have that history to you, then it's great to start selling on Walmart because then one, they're more likely to pick you, and two, um, they are looking for someone who has that success and then they know what to do with it in a sense because one of the things about Walmart is that a lot of the customers trust its products because of the vetting process. So a lot of people are comfortable purchasing from Walmart online. They do have a commission fee base, so you're not being charged for on a monthly basis and you're not being charged um, per product listing. Instead, you're going to be charged for each purchase made with a varying commission rate of being 6 to 15%. Um, and one of the things notable is that since 2016, they have, grown exponentially in the third party sellers, which is again, you as a drop shipping provider or someone who sells their art via dropship, you would be considered a third party seller. And so they have grown a lot since. And this is just data from 2021, but I imagine it's a lot more now because since 2020, they've been accepting, I think, at least 50,000 per month essentially. And it's very interesting to see, I guess, how they're starting to notice how well their online space is working, especially since the height of 2020. Again, it's one of the things that the company is starting to notice and they're going to want to see develop even further and create better ties and connections with their third party sellers as they're noticing that online selling is successful for them. And we'll see in a bit when we kind of look at the numbers. As another note here, we have the marketing in terms of they provide both self-serve marketing and also marketing campaigns that are managed by Walmart itself. I believe there are some stipulations with the managed campaigns by Walmart, as I think there is a $25,000 minimum of expected returns. However, there is a self-serving component that you could take into consideration as a starting point. And then once you see it really take off and you start seeing good sales, then, probably consider the managed campaigns that Walmart offers. It's one of the very interesting models that they provide for themselves. And again, this is showcasing some of the online sales that they have shown. And I think what's interesting is that I wish I had a little comparison of the graph, but maybe I'll show in post edit. But um, for the most part, Walmart in itself as a company in its totality with its retail and online combined, it had a very steady flow of sales since 2016 onwards. I would say that it kind of went up a bit by bit by bit, whereas when we saw in 2020 to 2021 on online sales, there was a huge spike, almost kind of doubling essentially in between those 2 years, and it has been growing ever since. And what that tells me personally is that it's been, Walmart has been noticing this and they have been doing, for ways to make the online space a bit more beneficial. I know that they're offering more distribution areas for their own online fulfillment as well as offering fulfillment for their third-party vendors. And these are just some of the aspects to take into consideration when you're looking at to Walmart because as the years develop and as their online sales continue to grow past 2020 and onwards, um, you know, they're going to be leveraging themselves better to appeal to third-party vendors. And it's already being shown through their advertisements and it's being shown through their way that they're doing their commission rates. I don't think the commission rates in comparison to a lot of other places is otherwise higher than usual, and it should be, something that you'll see in the future as something a bit more competitive in comparison. I think when it comes to the wall art itself, that I saw selling on Walmart was that because of its customer base, and I'm not entirely surprised, it does seem to capture a lot of people who are interested in farmhouse or Midwestern art. So you're going to find art that's farmhouse, farm, in the country type of art pieces. Less so about the customizable art, more so a specific genre, a specific type of imagery. You do have to consider the Walmart customer because that's who's shopping there at the end of the day. And so when you're looking at what to provide onto Walmart, typography is always successful, and as well as farmhouse. So think of cow imagery, think of farm typography, think of designs and patterns that bode well with farmhouse appeals. So if you ever go onto Walmart and you see their bestsellers, there's a good mix, but for the most part, you're going to see a lot of cows and you're going to see a lot of farm typography. So keep that in mind when you're going onto Walmart and you're trying to see who your competitors are or your fellow vendors are. It's going to be within that scope. So if you already have art that lends to that, great. If you don't and you want to still sell on Walmart, just take that into consideration and also look into who the customer base is for Walmart. As we know, it's a lot of farmhouse and typography centric type of imagery. Also, they love peel and stick there. So if you're already selling peel and stick or you're interested in selling peel and stick, Walmart is a great place to start there as well. And I think that's about it for these four vendors. Of course, we talked about Amazon, Etsy, Wayfair, and Walmart, and I think it's a good review of the four. And I think, and let me take myself off the PowerPoint real quick. I guess as an overview for all that we talked about today, we will be noticing a trend of consumers purchasing online as opposed to in store. Some factors to take into consideration was the height of the 2020. That's one aspect, but another aspect is that we have a new generation becoming a new generation of consumers. So Gen Z, as we know, is a lot more online than previous generations, as well as they're showing that they're more favoring to purchasing online. So even when you're having your own e-commerce store and it's pretty successful and it's lending towards that type of idea, these marketplaces that I showed today and others as well are noticing that trend as well. And so they're trying to also optimize themselves for online selling. With that, you want to start lending your imagery and lending your products to those types of marketplaces because it's just going to lead to more, profit at the end of the day. And it's great that you have a success on your own ecom. It's just you want to see how you can grow outside of that and expand outside of that. And so maybe one of the four of these marketplaces speaks to you as what type of store you plan to have in the future, or even multiple of these platforms if you're, seeing yourself as being able to have enough sales in the future for those types of platforms. Of course, if you have any questions about this, let me know. Or if you have any questions about lumaprints.com in general as well, I'm also open to hearing your questions. Hopefully, this was beneficial for you guys. I think going into the new year and you're looking into expanding your store and growing your business, these are some great things to take into consideration. Yeah, no problem, Tilva. Thank you for the compliment. And then, as always, if you guys came in later and you missed some of the aspects of the presentation, such as the beginning where I talked about Amazon or Etsy, feel free to go in and check our YouTube later, probably next week, and we'll have this video up on YouTube as well, so you can review this. We post our videos there all the time, so you shouldn't be missing any webinars from the past. I would suggest also subscribing in case, of course, you can't always make it to these webinars. If you subscribe and ping the notification bell at the bottom. You're always going to be on top of the videos that we post, especially because, I know not everyone can make it at this time. We always have those videos up so you can still review the content that we're talking about. And, if you have any questions as well regarding Lumaprints, we'll still stay here after the presentation. And then, of course, if you're interested in our products and you live local to California, Anaheim, you're always welcome to visit our showroom and you can talk to me or to the other people here in the marketing department, such as Sarah, and we can show you through. And we're very open to showing you guys the products that we offer and talking about your business. So make that a note that we're very personable when it comes to working with you guys, and we're always looking to find ways to help you just grow your business. If there are no questions, I will end the presentation here. Thank you guys for coming. See ya.